Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're bringing you a live version of what we've been playing. So this is episode 7. These are actually from the last 3 weeks. So all the way from the 13th of December. And we're just kind of recapping all of these different games that we've been playing. So I want to talk about 4 games in particular. And then if you have any games that you're interested in hearing about that we've been playing recently, there's a list of everything in the description of the video of all the games that we've played in the last couple of weeks. If you also just want to know about a couple of games from our library in general, feel free to ask. Our username on BGG is MACK1993. That's me. So you can go ahead and take a look at our library if there's anything you'd like to know. But with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about some games. So the first game that I want to talk about is a very festive game, and this is called 12 Days. So this is a Christmas-themed game based on the 12 Days of Christmas. Go figure. So the gameplay is actually pretty straightforward in 12 days. You are going to be playing cards from your hand in order to win the day. And how about that? There are 12 days, so each one of those is going to be worth a number of points based on the day that it is. And then after each day, you are going to be drawing up to your hand. So you'll be playing a card from your hand face down. But before you do that, you're actually going to be using those cards in your hand and putting one face down. So it's a weird system of playing cards from your hand to win these, but also wanting to keep stuff, because at the end of the game, you're going to score majorities for the cards in your hand. So not only are you playing the cards to win the tricks in the middle, but based on what's in your hand at the end, if you have the most of a specific number, then you also score that many points for that number. So for example, at the end of the game, if I have 4 12s and no one else has any 12s in their hand, I would get 12 points for just having the most 12s. And you'll do that for each number. So it's a weird condition of, do I hold these cards in my hand or do I play them to try to win the tricks? Now, to win the tricks, you have to be playing a low numbers. The lowest number wins, and it's pretty straightforward. You put your card face down, try to win. But there's one last twist in here, and that is there's a gift-giving phase. So at the start of each round, you're going to be giving these cards, one of them to the player to your left. And it's very straightforward in the way it works. You're going to actually just keep on passing it. It's really funny because you can keep on passing the people to your left the same cards. You can keep on filtering them 12s, but that could be a negative thing, right? If you keep giving them 12s, then you know that they're probably going to have all those 12s at the end for some extra points. And that's kind of a neat concept here, where you're playing during the game, trying to accumulate low cards so you can actually win these challenges in the center, or you're trying to hold on to higher cards so that way you have those majorities at the end. It's a neat little decision here, and I think the 12 Days of Christmas permeates everything. There's only 1 1, there's 2 2s, there's 12 12s. And then there's also these Santa Claus cards that are zeros. So they automatically win any trick they're played in. But if you win that trick with Santa Claus or Mrs. Claus, then you automatically have to give the card you won to someone else. So it's a really goofy game. And a lot of times what ends up happening is people hoard their low cards for the end of the game and start trying to win these larger tricks. And really the winner is determined based on who has those majorities at the end, as well as who is able to correctly predict how, I guess, high of a card someone can win one of these rounds with. So it's really interesting because in some of the early rounds, someone might win with like a 10 or an 11, which is pretty impressive. So there's some cool stuff here with 12 Days, and I think that it does a good job playing its theme. For rating wise, I give this one a 6. I think that this is a fine game, and it is one that I will pull out on occasion. So this is going to be one that you do pull out during the holiday season. It's a small little card game, but it's not going to be one that I pull out of season for sure. And I would much rather play something like Arboretum or something else that has that tension of that hand crafting throughout. So it's a great game though. This is a very, very much thematic style of game, and one that I'm enjoying. Now, the next game that I want to talk about here is Pax Viking. So we'll go ahead and zoom out really quick. But Pax Viking. Now, the Pax series is a game that all uses this same style. And the style is it has a large market of cards. And so this market of cards is also in here. Now, first off, the cards in Pax Viking, they're round. So they're supposed to look like Viking shields. And right off the bat, that's kind of annoying to me because they shuffle awkwardly. You can't really sleeve them. And that's unfortunate because the cards are a huge part of this game. But that being said, the gameplay itself is very similar to something you'd see in PAX, where the board is ever changing. The cards that you're adding to your tableau and to your hand really do matter. And that's really the core mechanic of the game, is collecting these cards under understanding what cards people are getting and being able to play them for their immediate effects. However, in this game, money is way more important than any of the other PAX games I've seen, as opposed to maybe troops on the map, etc. Most of the cards that you're going to be playing are going to allow you to gain more money. Now, the reason you're gaining money in this game is money is usually a barrier in order to access specific ports on the board. So as you play, you're going to have your character in front of you, and your character has all sorts of stats and room for upgrade cards on their board. And you'll also have all of these little tokens in your upper section here. Now, these tokens are kind of like your control markers. As you play, you're going to be putting them out on the board, and you want to get as many as possible out, because whoever has the most of a specific type is going to get extra actions for that type, as well as access to a special action. And the main way you're going to getting these out is by placing them onto these controlled sections on the board, these cards. Now, a lot of these cards are actually going to come from your hand. The board's going to be unexplored, and I really like that mechanism here. You're going to be going to these empty spots, playing a card from your hand onto the board, and then be able to put your control markers on it. But there's a lot of them that are actually already printed on the board, and the way that you access them is through cash. And a lot of the times, you're going to need cash in order to get cash, so it's really important to get tokens out early so that you can accumulate different money, and then after you get some money, you need to find some sort of combination of cards in order to gain more money. So it's really interesting, because the single currency in the game is so important. It kind of drives everything, that despite all of the variety of cards, it honestly felt like a lot of the stuff was all doing the same thing, but just in different ways. You were figuring out ways to get discounts on cash. You're figuring out ways on spending that cash to get more cash. And a lot of times it was just about stopping people's discounts on cash. And that might be your whole turn to go and take out a spot just to make sure that, hey, that person gets $3 discount on these things. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. And so this game very much has the players take control, but it has that feature in a lot of these king-making style games where if I take my time to stop you, it's going to put me severely behind, because this is a game where you always want to be putting yourself forward. But the way that the game ends is there's these 4 victory conditions on the board, and as soon as you have one of those conditions, you just win. And so a lot of the times it's all about holding specific cards in your hands that you can trigger one of those victory condition checks. An event has to happen before you're able to actually check for victory. But this one it's fine. It's not my favorite game. It's not my favorite PAX game, but I think the exploration is a lot of fun. I love how you're sailing with all sorts of different ships around the board. I love the exploration mechanism, how you're playing these to the board. I love the customization of your personal Viking ship. I think that's really fun. Not a big fan of the objective system as a whole. I think that it's pretty obtuse, especially when you are just starting to play the game. It reminds me of like a less elegant form of the victory conditions in something like Inish, where you have a lot of things to be aware of, but there's a lot of overlap, unfortunately, on the objectives, as opposed to where in something like Inish, you might have not overlap, but a relationship, if that makes sense, where a lot of the conditions will say, hey, you have to do this and this and this, and then that might be half of the other condition. Whereas in something like Inish, it might say, hey, you need to do this, but while you're doing this, you also have to be aware of this. And I think that's a pretty big distinct difference. So it's an interesting game. Like I said, I like the exploration. I like the idea of finding specific cards in your hand and playing them onto the board. I really enjoy that. Other than that, I think that the market system is a little wonky, where you pretty much only ever want to buy the first card, because otherwise the price gets prohibitively expensive, just because it is so much, and you want to be dedicating that money to controlling spots on the board as opposed to buying new cards. So there's an action where you can just buy a card from the top of the deck. That's usually the thing that you'll do instead of buying whatever the lowest value card is. So it's an interesting one, but not one that I see myself going back to or requesting, but it's one that I would play every once in a while. So I think this one also from me receives a 6. Let me check my ratings here. Yes, it receives a 6 from me. This is one that I would never suggest. It's one that I think has some flaws, but it is one that I would play every once in a while. I don't think it's a bad game. So it's going to get a 6 from me as well. All right. The next game that I want to talk about here is one of my favorite games. This is Coloretto. So Coloretto, and I specifically want to talk about some of the promos that are involved in Coloretto. And these are called the limit promos, I believe is what they're called, or they might just be the bonus cards. So if you're not familiar with Coloretto, it's a fantastic filler game. The whole idea is you're collecting chameleons and you want sets of chameleons. You score for your 3 largest sets at the end of the game. And these sets are going to be gained through taking these piles of cards. So the turn structure is very straightforward. On your turn, you draw a chameleon, put it in the center, or you take a pile of chameleons. Very, very simple, but great decisions, because if you actually want some of those chameleons you drew, you're going to have to wait around and hopefully they get back to you. So based on where you place them, it could be enticing for others, and I really like that. But the bonus cards are incredible. There's a mini expansion that comes with this 10th anniversary edition, and I think it's absolutely amazing. The way it works is it adds a small little rules change to the game, but because the core game is so solid and so straightforward and simple, those little rules changes, amazing. I love the way it works. So the 2 that we've played with most recently was, the first one was all of the jokers, which are the wilds in the game, which are usually extremely strong and really change the tide of the game because they allow you to get to higher scoring brackets. They're negative points now. And that was awesome because right off the bat, there were now even more dangerous spots to take. And so taking specific piles became even more of a risk. And I really like that. You had to really prioritize getting specific colors if you wanted to get to higher scoring brackets, because you no longer had those wilds to fall back on. Such a simple change, but it works so well. Loved it. The second thing that I really enjoyed was another bonus card that we played with that said, instead of scoring your 3 largest piles, you only score your 2 largest piles. Really easy. Rules change again, but the implications once again are huge. And I love that because for each pile over the ones you score, they're actually negative points. And those also increase in severity based on how many extra cards you have. And I love that about this. So if you have a pile of 2 of the same color, but they're the ones you're not scoring, you're scoring suddenly, instead of -1 point, -4, and then it jumps to -8. And so taking small piles in that version of the game actually became beneficial, because in the original Coloretto, sometimes just getting large amounts of cards was the best, even if you're picking up a couple of negative points here and there. In this case, those negatives are way more severe and intense, and I love that about this. So there's a lot of really cool things to explore when it comes to the bonus cards, and I think Coloretto is just a fantastic game. So if you are going to hunt down an edition of this game, unfortunately, it's currently out of print, but if you do, please make sure you get the bonus cards. I think they really just add even more to such a simple game. And the fact that the rules are so easy to integrate because that game system is so smooth, I think it's a knockout winner. It's amazing. So fantastic game. That is Coloretto. Once again, if you are watching live, you can ask about any of the games that are on our list here. They're in the description. Or if there's anything you'd like to comment about the games we're talking about, love to hear your feedback. So the next game I want to talk about here is such a goofy game. Let's see if I can find it here. This is called Rattlesnakes. Now, if you are not familiar with this game, I don't blame you. It is probably the most random game I've ever seen, but it's a friend of mine's favorite finisher to game night, his favorite filler. And it cracks me up because I do not think this game is good at all. But the fact that he loves it so much cracks me up. So shout out to my friend Dan here. And this is a game that had the idea, and this happens a lot when it comes to board games, where they find something and they say, ooh, how can I make a game around this? Whether it be a group of wooden meeples or a group of toothpicks or something like that. In this case, it was rattlesnake eggs. Now, rattlesnake eggs are magnets, and they are these weird awkward shapes. You throw them up in the air and they shake, and they make this super funky noise when you throw them, which is cool, right? Like, that's something that you'd see at like a Boy Scout camp. I remember that's my first time I interacted with these. But this game says, let's try to make a game around it. So the game itself has this map of rattlesnakes. With the art is hilarious. It cracks me up. And you are going to be rolling a die, and the die has a color. And so you take one of these rattlesnake eggs and you put it into that pile of rattlesnakes. And your whole goal is to make sure that those snake eggs don't touch. Because if any rattlesnake eggs do touch when it's your turn and you're placing stuff out, they will go into your hand. So you start the game with, I think it's like 4 or 5 of these rattlesnake eggs. And on your turn, you roll the die, put the thing out. And that's it. That's really all you're doing. Unfortunately, the havoc comes from just the amount of these snake eggs that are on the board. And really, as soon as you hit one of the other snake eggs, almost all of the other ones are going to hit you. The board, unfortunately, does warp after time. So your snake aids, things are going to start rolling. And then as soon as one person makes a mistake, it's kind of like Jenga, where all of the snake eggs will just all of a sudden magnetize to each other. And it's this chaos. And that's what happens pretty much every single game. So usually the way that you win this game is you go first. Because as soon as you go first, you have pretty much no risk on your first turn, and then you have way less magnets to worry about than anyone else. Unfortunately, someone can also pick up something, and that might clear the way for your turn as well. So it's very lopsided to that favor for that first player. And there's really just not a lot going on. The strategy is pretty straightforward. Like I said before, it really reminds me of something like Jenga, but I just think it's really funny and really endearing that Dan likes this game so much. And it's one that I'll always play with him, but not one that I'll ever choose to play, and not one that I even think is a good game. So on the rating scale, this one is getting a 4 from me. I think that it's not a good game. It's below average, but it's one that I will play. I could play again. And I know that I will play again. So that's Rattlesnakes. I'm gonna get some water really quick here. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next game. So as you saw in the thumbnail, our next game here is Sonora. Now, Sonora is a flick and write game. Now, this takes a departure from the standard roll and write style games by saying, hey, this is something you can actually get good at. And you are playing all of these mini games, and these mini games all have to do with different regions that you're going to be flicking this crocodile style disc into. Now, these discs are all valued. So each of them is going to have a point value that you're going to be using. And every time you flick one, you're going to be putting it into one of these 4 quadrants. And these quadrants allow you to play a specific minigame. Now, we won't talk about the minigames yet, but these different quadrants here also have bonuses. So you see these little white circles. Anytime you get one in there, you essentially double the value of the chip, which is pretty dang important. And so getting into those white sections is huge. Now, the middle section I find really interesting because in games like Chrocodile, you get the disc in that middle, it's like super rewarding. You get points, guaranteed points. It's awesome. However, in this game in Sonora, if you get your disc in the middle of the section, it is removed from the board and you can place it at any one of the mini games. However, that's not necessarily a good thing, which I find kind of funky. I think that the award should be a little bit stronger here because in Sonora, if you get in the center, you're not doubling the value of whatever you put in there. You are getting whatever the value of the chip is in the thing you want it in, but it's not necessarily going to make or break your game because the other ones are just so much more powerful. Example, this little rabbit here, if you get this here, it's going to double whatever that number is in the rabbit section. So if you get your 5 there, you're getting essentially, double the amount of your best chip, and that's amazing. However, if you get into the middle, it feels kind of bad because you're like, dang, I wasted my 5, and now I'm not getting this huge amount of value. And I find that really interesting here. I think that the middle section should be a little bit more powerful because you really want those other bonuses. The other ones allow you to use it twice in the same section, which is super, super good, and because you're allowed to take 2 actions, essentially. It's the same thing. Those bonuses are super, super powerful. But that being said, there is a risk to that because you have to leave them on the board and get to survive all the other players' turns because they're going to be flicking them as well. There's some interesting things with the flicking. So it's a weird decision of, do I actually keep my large numbers last to ensure that I am going to make sure that they get flicked appropriately? Do I hold my small numbers last so that I can flick all the other people's? That's a really fascinating choice here. But that being said, let's talk about the mini games. When you get them in here, you have 3 little mini games that I think are pretty cool. There's 3 of them that are cool, one that's not. First one here is the owl one. I like this one. Whatever the number is, you cross off that many X's, and wherever you stop, you circle it and you get the bonus. I like it. Very straightforward. It means that big numbers and small numbers in this section are really powerful. And I think that's really cool because you can get to the later areas and score like 10 points with a 1, which is great. So I really like that. These scores are pretty big, though. They usually get in the 200s. So keep that in mind. The next one here is the rabbits. Whatever your number is, you can cross off these intersections and you're trying to complete these triangles. So another fun one. I like this one. It's really dynamic in getting bonuses and points. Really like that. You also have this one up here. It's a Tetris game, very straightforward, trying to get sets of these cactus. So the more cactus you have, the more points you get. Also, once again, it's dynamic where you can also get bonuses in addition to getting everything. So it's got that nice satisfaction of comboing, which is great. Last section, most boring section, not a fan. But once again, if you can get double value in this section, so powerful. This is the lizard section. The lizard section is simply just write down however many spaces you got in one of these areas. So for example, this first one, you need 6. Once you got 6, you get all those points. And that's it. If you're the first one to get that, you get a little bonus. Not that exciting. So this is kind of the one where it's really funny because when you play in Sonora, you're kind of always hoping that your pieces don't fall into the lizard section, because wherever those pieces fall, that's the game that you play with. So if you ever fall into that lizard section, you're like, no, it's doomed. And so if somebody hits you in there, it feels bad as well because it feels like you just wasted your turn. And I think that's kind of funny. I like that there is something like that in this game because it adds even more stress and anxiety to the flick style of this system. This game is really interesting to me because it is, like I said, you can actually get good at it. You can carefully position your places, get all those bonuses, but people can interfere with that. If they notice that you're doing something, they can make it their mission to knock you out of those bonus areas. So it's kind of funny because you're always getting something with this game, but you can definitely be better. So this one is very interesting to me. It's actually a lot of fun. I like the pace of it. I like how everybody is going in turns during the flicking phase, but then the resolution is simultaneous. So the flow of the game is actually pretty dang good. The mini games are a little bit much to teach people at the beginning. They think that they have a hard time translating the different bonuses to the different sections, understanding symbology. But overall, I think after one play, this is going to be a hit. This is one that people do enjoy. It has that cool dexterity element, but also the tactical decisions of using your results onto your little roll and write games. And it always feels good to get bonuses. So I'm surprised at how big of a hit this one is. And I can see this one hitting the table quite a bit. So it's one that I do enjoy. I think this one should be a 7 on here. Let me see. Yep, it's a 7. I think this is a good game. It's not one that I'm going to ask to play a lot of. There are better blank and write games that I enjoy personally, but I have to give this one credence. This one is a good game. This is a 7 for me. I think this is a great rating. So I think this game is really good. I think it's good. This is Sonora. I think it's a great one. And like I said, those elements about it, really, really fascinating. All right, let's go ahead and talk about my favorite trivia game. If you can guess what that is, please give it a try, but I will go ahead and spoil it now. Favorite trivia game here is Wits and Wagers. I think Wits and Wagers is fantastic. And one thing that I really want to highlight here in this chat is how timeless it is. It really is, because all of these questions here are going to be numerically based, and a lot of them have to do with just past events. And it doesn't matter how long you go, those answers are always going to be those numbers. And because they're dates and so obscure, even if you play the same questions over and over again, the infrequency of the questions means that you're going to probably forget specific dates. And I think that's pretty dang awesome because it will never become outdated. And I love that. Nothing is going to change when the first toilet paper commercial showed up. And that's awesome because this is a game that you can play at any time. And based on the people you're playing with, you have this wealth of knowledge and people that you think that you can bet on. And I really like this about this. So the way the game works is you have a question. It'll say something like, let's go with that example. Tell me what tell me what the year is for the first toilet paper commercial. And then everybody writes on their dry erase board what they think. So 1940, 1960, whatever. Then they put it down, everybody reveals it. After the reveal, everyone takes poker chips and bets on the sections that they think is correct. Whoever's closest without going over. So it's Price is Right style. There's also one that's a 1, and you have to try to do your best to make that prediction. And it's really awesome because if somebody knows it, they might boast and say, oh, I know it. But you might have a different idea and be like, but I think that I'm right, or I trust myself, or do I trust that person? And you can bet on them, and there's no fault to that. And I love that, how you can put your faith in whoever you choose. And I think that's so fascinating. I think that's such a great choice because you are playing the people at the table, but you also have your own investment and your own knowledge that you can play off of as well. And that's fantastic. And you can also have people that have no idea what they're talking about boasting like they do. I know when I play this game, I try to go for the wall with a lot of my guesses, and I'm not very good at trivia. I don't know a lot of these things. Dates are not something that that I'm pretty good at. So I'm usually wrong, but when I'm right, I feel like I can trust myself. So it's really cool to have that decision. So I really like the way that you're playing with the people and playing it towards them. It's just such a well done. And then the final Jeopardy style where you're able to bet all of your money at the end of the game is super well done. I love that there's that huge amount of tension and trying to math it out, but also just trying to go for the glory and fame. There's some good stuff here. So fantastic trivia game. So good that we went and got the new edition. So like as soon as we finished playing, we're like, all right, let's try the next one. I think it's called, let's see if I can find it here. Wits and Wagers. It's the most recent edition. It's Vegas, baby. I don't think it's rated extremely highly. Actually, it is rated pretty well actually compared to the original Wits and Wagers. So 7.5. It's the same thing, but it looks like it employs something similar to Las Vegas Royale, where there are going to be mini games that you can play with each of your guesses. And I think that's cool. And once again, just like Las Vegas, you can turn those off. You don't have to play with them, which I think is great. So it might give you something extra that you can play if you want to, but not necessarily something you always have to play with. And I like stuff like that, where you have some choice in what expansions you play with, and you can always play the original because that original is pretty fantastic. So really enjoy Wits and Wagers. So let's talk about the next game. This next game is one that I've been anticipating for a while. Finally got that reprint in, and this is Glass Road, a game by Uwe Rosenberg that I was extremely surprised and happy with because it takes the things I like, building buildings, getting special abilities, but combines it with role selection and role prediction. And I love that here. So it's a very straightforward and short game, but one that just clicks. I really like the simultaneous phase selections are the role selections. You'll be picking all your different cards, and then everybody reveals one at a time based on whoever's start player. And that's my favorite part about this game are the roles, because the roles just make sense. It's easy to look at a card and understand what it does. You say, oh, I get to build something. Pretty straightforward. Oh, I get this resource. Oh, I spend this thing and get this thing. And it's so awesome to be able to look at your cards and look at other players' boards and immediately understand what things are potentially useful for them. And I love that because a big part of this game is predicting what the other players at the table are going to do, which is great because this isn't just a game where you're going to be looking at your own stuff the whole time. There's a market that everyone's competing for. There's other player boards that you're going to have to make sure you look at so that you know which cards that you can anticipate using. And it feels so good when you have a card that somebody else uses and you've predicted correctly and you get some sort of bonus. And I love the fact that when you are revealing these cards in that reveal phase, you don't have to use your cards full effect if you don't want to, but you can still use it just to make sure that person gets less of a good action. And it cracks me up because it happens more often than not. Oh man, it's so funny. So I really like this one. I think that the buildings are really straightforward. I think that the flow of the game is really well done. And I love that this came with all of the extra little promo buildings and promo tiles. I think that's super awesome. So I think that Capstone Games did a great job with the reprint. We have an organizing video on our channel now, and everything fits nicely, snugly in that box. I think the resource system is really clever. And I love how your board, it reminds me a lot of Fields of Arle, where your board just starts off with all of this terrain, and it's kind of up to you to do what you want with that terrain. And I love the fact that you can really just kind of customize it right at the get-go in order to make room for new things, maybe to clear off for buildings. And I love that different buildings and different characters will interact with different terrains. So there's a lot of cool things to think about, but nothing overcomplicated. And this just makes for a really smooth experience. Glass Road's one that I really want to keep on playing. Yeah, it's fantastic. I really like this game. So I'm excited to try more of it. And the next game that I want to talk about here is Awkward Guests. And Awkward Guests, if you're unfamiliar, is essentially a more, I guess, a more interesting game of Clue, where you're getting all of your information by sharing information as opposed to just kind of getting random information. Not necessarily Clue, you're actually sharing as well, I guess. But in this one, it's really fascinating. So, start of the game, you are going to have this large hand of cards, and you're going to be writing all these clue cards on your own personal board. And this board is going to have all sorts of information on it. So let's get a picture here. So this information is going to be the killers, their motives, the locations where the killers could potentially have been, and the different weapons that they could have been using. And I really like this system. It's really, really well laid out. I think it just makes a lot of sense here. You're able to track things easily, and I think that this note-taking system just works. A lot of the clue cards also make a lot of sense. So you'll be passing around these clues, and these clues all have a value attached to them. Let me pull up a picture here so I can show you. So all of these clues have a value attached to them. Here we are. There you go. So each of them is worth a certain amount. The ones are pretty crappy clues if we're being honest, but they might give you a smidge of information. The threes, though, are where the really juicy stuff is. So when it's your turn, you're going to be asking players for two different things, and you're saying, hey, can I get something on this person or at this place? And then everyone determines how much information they're willing to give you. And so they could give you a whole hand of those two things you asked for, but then obviously you have to give that much information in return. So you're getting exactly what you want when you're asking from other people, but you can give them anything. And this is a game where the cooperation is kind of part of the game, because if you're giving bad information to people, people probably aren't going to give you any good information back. So it definitely behooves you to actually be thoughtful of what you're giving to people, because if people keep getting the same clues from you, they're not going to want to continue to give you good information. So I really like how that system is here, and it's kind of perpetuated throughout. Okay, Mom Gamer here this morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Just going through some of the games. We have 2 left on our list here that we're going through. And if you have any questions or any games specifically that you want to know about, there's a list in the description that has all of the different games that we've played these last couple of weeks. So super excited to hear from you, and thanks for joining us this morning. So Awkward Guests is a game of passing information, gaining information, and then making educated guesses. Now, the cool thing that this game has added recently is an application, and the app essentially will make it so that there's no player elimination of the game. In every round, you can guess to see who actually the killer is at the end of the round. And if you get it right, excellent, you win. If you get it wrong, the penalty is you are not allowed to guess the next round. Now, that might seem like it's not really a big penalty, and it really isn't in the early stages of the game, because usually in the early stages of the game, no one's really going to know the answer for a couple of rounds, and it ends up not being a huge issue. And that actually was kind of a weird sticking point of this particular play that we did of it, because I won on the first turn, and it was unreal, because it was literally just I looked at my board. I've like, okay, this killer potentially could be it, and I've eliminated some of these, and they could be in this location. So I very much guessed. I took an educated guess, an estimate, if you will, and I got it on the first play. And it was really funny because we were teaching this to a couple of people for the first time, and it was kind of a damper on their experience. But I felt that it was just the way to play, because there was no penalty to guessing the first round, really, because it wasn't going to affect anyone, right? Like, I didn't think anybody was going to get it the first round. I didn't think anybody was going to get it the second round. So I went and made the guess, and I got it right on the first guess. And it was kind of a damper, because we had all this setup, because you take this large amount of cards and you shuffle them into this large deck, and then you take this large amount of time and delivering stuff and taking notes, and then all that build up for, you're supposed to have like maybe multiple rounds, but it just was over like that. And then when you finish the game, you have to unsort all of these cards. There's like 200 cards, something like that, maybe even 250 cards. Yeah, 243 cards. And so when you finish, you have to take all those cards and sort them back out. So the game took like 15 minutes to play, because it only lasted that one round. And then it took like 15, 20 minutes to pack up, because you had to sort all the cards. And unfortunately, the app can lead to situations like that, which is kind of frustrating for people, which is kind of weird. Yes, it was cool to say, hey, we have, oh, that's legendary, you completed in one round, so cool. But at the same time, is that satisfying for everybody else that it was kind of a fluke? So I'm not sure how I still feel about that situation. Like, it felt cool to get it on the first try, but compared to something like Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, where that game, the setup for that game was a breeze, the gameplay leans into those radical guesses based on the stories. Whereas this one, it felt pretty awful to get it right the first round, because no one really got to play the game. And there's just so much setup involved with the game. It was such a weird feeling. I don't know. Have you ever had this feeling of it takes a long time to set up a game, and then all of a sudden it's just over? Maybe you drawing a bad card in a cooperative game and just suddenly kills everybody, or maybe you do the unexpected like this. So I'm curious to hear what you think about this. If this situation has ever arisen to you, if you've gone in a position where, oh no, that shouldn't have happened, and now we're just done. Do you just play again? Like, that was an option that we had, but I think that the other players at the table were just like, I don't know if we really want to play this again. Let's try something else new. It was because it was so anticlimactic. Yeah. So unfortunately, things like that can happen in games like this. And because of that application, there's no threat for player elimination. So it was not an issue to just throw out some random guesses. And that's what ended up happening. So I'm curious to know if you've ever had a situation like that that's put you in an awkward spot. So, or have you been the awkward guest yourself? So that's awkward guests. The next game that I want to talk about here is a small little book game. And this is called the Crusoe Crew. Now, the Crusoe Crew is a let's see if I can find it here. Crusoe Crew is a Van Ryder graphic novel adventure game. Now, if you're not familiar with this is a very straightforward system of it's a book. It's a choose your own adventure book that has puzzles in it. I don't know if I would qualify this directly as a board game. I think that it's a fun experience. It definitely it plays into that. It has those puzzles. It's fun. It has things that you're marking, I guess, with the map. So there is a little bit of that of writing as you play. But this game really has a big emphasis on puzzle solving. Now, this game is really interesting to me because I played this time with a group of middle schoolers. And these middle schoolers, they ate it up for the first hour. Like, oh man, they loved going to the pages. And as the facilitator, I played the facilitator this time, they would go as a group, they would talk about their movements, they would move around, and they would explore all of these new areas. I'm not going to get any spoilers here, but the big thing here is that each player is going to have their own special abilities. So you have at the start, each player gets their own books. And these books here have special abilities for each character. Like this woman here, I forget their names, but this woman here, her ability is that she's really good at puzzles. So whenever a puzzle shows up, this character might have a clue for the puzzle, which is kind of neat because they can share that with the rest of the group. And the other characters here have other effects as well. Like this one can talk to animals. This one's really agile. And then this one here is very strong. And so you have all of these characters that have all of these different ways that they can actually approach and talk about the book. And I think it's really fascinating. I think that it can lead to some really interesting gameplay. However, when it comes to playing this game with kids, this is actually a detriment. As I said before, they really ate it up for that first hour, being able to enjoy it, dive into it. But as soon as the first event that came up with one of these characters, there's can be an event where, hey, your character is very agile, so they can do this thing and no one else can. That's where things started to stop being so smooth because a character all of a sudden is doing more than the other players and everyone else at the table is waiting for this person. And I think the coolest thing about this game is everyone has their own book and they're able to participate at the same time. But as soon as one of these events comes up, all of a sudden everyone else is no longer participating, they're all watching. And you have people who are at different reading levels. So you have some that are taking a little bit longer to read, and that can cause some people to become bored with this situation. And so this is a very crucial thing to know if you are going to teach this game to younger kids, is that there are these moments in this game where this can happen. Now, there's two ways that you can approach this. You can approach this where we say, hey, we wait because this is how the game is intended to play, and you wait. Or you can do the second approach where you say, hey, this person is doing this thing. You may continue exploring. And so I tried the original version and said, okay, let's go with you can do as you see fit, and let's make sure that let's wait when it comes to this to these moments, or you can just continue exploring while the person is doing their event. And it turned out to be that the best way to approach this was to have the players work together, but also choose their own paths. So it was like a bit of both. And as the mediator, once you've played the game through once, you can kind of understand when those sections are important where players do need to stick together. And I think that's definitely with some foresight of saying, oh, okay, this puzzle requires both of these people to be in these two different locations. And I think you can notice that once you play through it once. So just something to be aware of when you do play this game is that there will be moments like this. There will be sections where, hey, you might have a puzzle that requires one person to go off on their own adventure for a significant amount of time. And I think that's something to be aware of with this. Now, I've changed my rating of this game from a 6 to a 5. I do think this is it's an okay game. This is a mediocre game, in my opinion. Take it or leave it. I think that there are better of these choose your own adventure books. I think that the puzzles are, it can be really difficult or really easy, and your score depends on basically how difficult of puzzles you can complete. And I think that the ability for one player to play more game than others can be frustrating and can lead to disengagement from a lot of people. So that's the biggest reason that this game has been affected. This is one that I'm probably not going to go back to, and I probably won't look for an extra copy of the next graphic novel adventures game. So this is one of those ones where you can play it maybe 3 or 4 times because there's a bunch of different islands you can go to. But not one that I think I'm going to go back to particularly because of the experience and because of who you're going to be playing with. It's a really weird relationship of you want more people playing with you so you get all of the different abilities of the different characters, but the more people that play, the less time that you actually get to play the game, which is weird because everybody has their own book. It's a very weird trade-off. So interesting game, one that I do like. I really like the art style. I love the puzzles. The humor is great, but the game itself, I think, suffers from all the things that it's trying to do. So unfortunately, that is Crusoe Crew. And then the last game that I want to talk about is just one of my favorite games. I just want to gush a little bit, and this is going to be for Marvel Champions. So I got to play Marvel Champions a lot this over during the holidays. Been playing a lot online with my brother. So not necessarily like on Tabletopia or anything like that, but literally I'll just call him, and it's awesome because we both have our games set up in front of us, and we'll just play Marvel Champions, and it is so much fun. Been playing a lot with some of my favorite characters from this year. Now, be on the lookout. We do have a list coming out very soon that has do have a list coming out very soon that has our favorite Marvel Champions expansions from the year. So that's going to be out, I think, tomorrow, maybe. But super excited to share that with you. But the one that I want to talk about in particular is a game that I had with Star-Lord. And it's so funny. Star-Lord is the king of grieving, and it cracks me up. He has an effect that when you play, you can play any card from a hand for -3 cost. And I love that effect. That is such a fun effect. But as a detriment to this, when you do play a card at -3 costs, you have to deal yourself an encounter card. And I think that is so funny because when you do that, we were playing Standard 2 and Expert 2, and the encounter cards in that are absolutely terrible because all of these cards usually are like, hey, this person attacks with extra attack and it has surge. And so usually when you're dealing yourself encounter cards, you're dealing yourself a lot of encounter cards. And it's so funny because you have these moments where you're like, hey, is it worth playing this thing for potentially 2 turns worth of threat? And it's so fun. And I think that this works extremely well with Star-Lord because, surprisingly enough, actually, a lot of Star-Lord's cards activate when you have a lot of encounter cards on you. So, like, Sliding Shot, for example, says it does extra damage if you have extra encounter cards dealt. If you're playing harder games, you're gonna be dealt extra encounter cards regardless. Like, that's just gonna be a thing, which is kind of funny because all of a sudden your cards are just inherently better because the game is already punishing you, which is really funny. So your cards, you're not having to take you're not having to inflict damage to yourself because the game is already doing that for you. So your cards like Sliding Shot, and you have this other one that gets you extra cards in your hand for each encounter card on you. They're already going to be boosted, which is kind of awesome. So it was really funny. And we played against the Green Goblin. So Green Goblin, and his whole thing is he basically shoots out these huge waves of encounter cards towards you. And we actually use that to our advantage because there was a round where when he flips, he deals you, I think, 4 additional encounter cards when you're playing an expert. And so you have essentially, if you use Peter Quill's ability, you have 5 encounter cards hanging out on you as soon as he drops down to hit points. And we use this to our advantage because we had a turn where we essentially set up the whole Guardians of the Galaxy, and we're able to do 40 damage in 1 turn to Green Goblin through the use of all of these encounter cards. Because like I said, all these cards, they scale based on how many you have. So as soon as he deals you a bunch, you're able to just do huge amounts of damage. So it was so interesting. Didn't have to deal with those consequences. And I thought that was pretty fantastic. So you've got some really cool options here with Star-Lord. I love his super risky playstyle. I love how he allows you to play some cards that you normally would never be able to. It just cracks me up. Thank you for joining us this morning, Mom Gamer. Thank you so much. Happy gaming to you as well, and have a happy new year. So fantastic. I just love this playstyle. It really cracks me up. But that 40 damage turn, that's pretty incredible in my opinion. And Star-Lord is just one of those characters where you have lots of knobs to turn. Those knobs are very powerful, but the consequences are also extremely severe. So some great stuff here, though. Really enjoy Marvel Champions. And those are the games that I wanted to talk about this time. So that's what we've been playing. And I'll go ahead and quickly run through that whole list of all the games that we've been playing. Whew, it's a big one this time. So here's the entire list from top to bottom. So first, Tiny Towns, Telestrations, Startups, Glenmore II Chronicles, the Crusoe Crew, Cockroach Poker, Rattlesnakes, Pax Vikings, Glory to Rome, Hadrian's Wall, Coloretto, Assassin's Creed, Brotherhood of Venice, Hallertau, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, Marvel Legendary, MicroMacro Crime City Full House, Final Girl, Marvel Champions, Corrosion, Parade, Anachrony, Glass Road, Exit the Game, The Catacombs, Race for the Galaxy, Sonora, 12 Days of Christmas, Mandala, Capital X2 Generations, For Sale, Railroading Challenge, Cascadia, Las Vegas Royale, Quacks of Quedlinburg, Biblios, Coup, Awkward Guests, Wits and Wagers. And if you have any questions about any of these games, or just games in general, or things that we're excited for, please leave those down in the comments. I'll make sure that I answer them. I'll stay on the chat here for maybe about a couple more minutes. We'll get some coffee really quick, and then we'll just keep on chatting. I'll talk about maybe some games that I'm really excited to play as well. Cheers. All right. So the first game that I'm super excited to play is one that we just got in. And this is a game that I've been anticipating for a really long time. This is a 2022 release. But it is here in 2021. And hopefully, not hopefully, I'm going to play some games of it today. Super excited. This is Townsfolk Tussle. So this has been one of my most anticipated games for a long time. This takes the two ideas that I love from some of my favorite games and combines them. Hey, fantastic. We get to keep you for a little extra time. Great to have you, Mom Gamer. So right now we're just talking about some games that I'm excited to play in the future. The first game is Townsfolk Tussle. Oh my gosh. So this is fantastic. Townsfolk Tussle just looks so good. As I said, it's a combination of two things that I love. The first thing is the boss battling of Kingdom Death Monster. This kind of carries over a lot of the simplicity of the AI cards, but also the creativity by pairing them with bosses. And it also carries over the map and terrain. And I love this. And the terrain is so freaking cute. I love it. It's all this cartoon style, and it looks very similar to Kingdom Death Monster, where you can interact with it, and each of them is going to have a way that you can use them to basically better your experience with whatever boss you're fighting, whether it be a car that you can run into people, a field that you can jump into to hide for extra evasion, things like that. I don't think evasion's actually a stat in this game, but I really like this. And it combines that boss battling system with the pacing of Too Many Bones. And that is so cool because you're going to be done with this game in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, based on the number of players. It says 40 minutes a player, which I hope is true. Like I said, I haven't played it yet. We just finished sleeving it, getting it already. But whoa, this just looks so fantastic. I cannot wait. The aesthetic is on point. The game looks so solid. It looks so simple to get into. And you're playing 4 challenges. And whoever your final boss is presents a new scenario challenge that you're going to be fighting, and I love this. I love the way that the production is incredible. Everything is dual layered. There's art everywhere. That's my favorite thing. This is my favorite stretch goal in a game ever, because the stretch goal was, hey, all our game content is perfect, but we're just going to add art to things that don't have art yet. And I think that's an amazing stretch goal. This is a good question, Mom Gamer. What is the game that I regret not backing? The biggest games that I regret not backing are actually from before I was in the hobby. And they are games that I had to go and buy afterwards. The first game was Blood Rage. So Blood Rage, I went and bought the Kickstarter edition because I love that game so much. And I was not in the hobby when it was on Kickstarter. So that was one that I really regretted not backing. Another game that I regretted not backing was Nemesis. That was another one that I was not in the hobby yet when that was on Kickstarter. So I had to go and hunt down a copy of that game. So that was right, like, when it was delivering, I was like, wow, this looks really awesome. So other than that, I don't think that there's a game that I regret not backing. Generally, we pretty much back whatever looks good. I don't think that there's other than games that I was not in the hobby for, not really any games that I regret. So I'm in a very lucky position where if something is interesting to me, I can back it and not feel bad about it. So pretty cool. I really like that. How about yourself? Any games that you regret not backing? I have a couple of games that I regret backing, but nothing that I regret not backing. Oh, man. Oh, but so excited for Townsfolk Tussle. This looks fantastic. The other game that we got is the new Ex Libris expansion. So the Ex Libris, not Ex Libris, what's it called? Res Arcana. I don't know why I said Ex Libris, but the Res Arcana expansion, Perlae Imperii. So unboxed that and got that all ready to go. So this has new artifacts, new monuments, and new places of power. So this looks fantastic. You have all of this new stuff that you just get to throw in. You have a new resource, the pearls, that is really flexible resource because it's not only a point, but oh my goodness, it can be used to fuel some really powerful stuff. And I really like that. You've got some new beasts, you've got new mages, you got new tags, new synergies. I'm excited to dive into this one. I really like Res Arcana. It's a great game. And I think that this just looks like a lot of fun. You have some really unique stuff. I love zero cost beasts. They're so strong. And then this dolphin here looks so powerful. Look at that. You get a free income of a point every round if you get this out early. And that's a lot of water generation. Super, super cool. So excited to dive into this and play some of the expansion. Up next, do you have a specific game that you enjoy playing on Christmas Eve, if any? I would say that there's nothing specific for Christmas Eve. I just like playing games. Whenever I visit family, we tend to spend Christmas with my wife's side of the family. We spend Thanksgiving with my side of the family, and we spend Christmas with her side of the family, which is awesome. I think that's a great way to divvy this out. But this is specifically the way it works is we just bring a whole bunch of games. Our car is just full. We have like all these bags full of games, and we just play whatever we're feeling. Yeah, and it's just up to whatever the mood. So there's nothing that I'm like, oh, I have to play this on Christmas Eve, but just play games. I like playing games. So there's a lot of fun games to play. So nothing in particular that I'm like, I have to play this. So super good stuff though. Just enjoy playing. There is a tradition that we've started though. It's called Nemesismas, where every Christmas time we make sure that we get some games of Nemesis in with a specific group of friends. So super excited every year for that because my wife loves playing the alien in Nemesis. So her whole thing is to kill everybody, and then everyone else is just doing their best to survive. So it's really fun to have that full player count of Nemesis and just have a fantastic game. Oh no, a few you regret backing. Please let me know. What are they? Good morning, Best at Star Trek. Thanks for joining us today. Happy gaming. And no, I have not. I have not tried Witchstone yet. It actually has been ordered though. So I ordered based on Chairman of the Board's recommendation. I won't spoil his list, but there were two games of his that were rated very highly on his best of the year. And so two of those are coming in for us. So we have Tinner's Trail. So Tinner's Trail is coming in as well as Witchstone. So those are going to be here, I think, next Tuesday or next Monday. So, but they are coming. So I will be able to play those and let you know. So super excited. And this is fantastic news that your wife wanted to play it again right after. So glad to hear that Witchstone is a big hit in your household. Fantastic. So excited to try that one as well. Yeah, I don't really know a lot of it. So I'm excited to hear more. Thank you. I think it's a pretty fantastic tradition. Merry Nemesis, Miss everyone. It's fantastic. Thank you for this confidence booster. I'm very excited to try it. Oh, let's see what else came in. Oh, the expansion to Super Skill Pinball came in. So I thought that the first Super Skill Pinball was fine. So Super Skill Pinball has, pull it up really quick for you. It's two words. Super Skill Pinball. All right. So Super Skill Pinball here was fine. It had one map that I liked a lot, like one that I would consistently play, but the rest, honestly, were super boring and not very fun. Didn't like, three-fourths. If three-fourths of your game is not good, that's pretty unfortunate. And that's kind of what it was at here with Super Skill Pinball 4K. It was really sad. So that's what it was. But the Dragon one is so good. Let me see if I can find the board here. It's not even showing. They're missing out. The best one is the Dragon one because you have special abilities that you get as you play, and you can actually pick the paths in which you do thing. Oh my gosh. Let's see. There it is. Okay. So here it is. The Dragon Slayer one is fantastic because the bumpers here are actually a fun puzzle. You're not just bumping back and forth. You have a choice when it comes to your leveling up system. So you can try many different combinations of strategies, and there are ways that you could recharge your spells, but you don't have to. I love that there's so many choices here with this small board, and the system is solid. The system makes sense. So like this one. I think that this map is great, but I think the rest of the board's honestly not very good. I agree. The first one got old very fast. So what I'm hoping is that this next one here, this new Super Scope Pinball, I hope that it has more like Dragon Slayer. I think that was like a big criticism with the first game, was that a lot of the boards were not very good. So hopefully they take that to heart and say, hey, let's give them more of what they want. If not, then probably just got to get rid of it, which is fine. And I'm here to try games and see if they're worth sticking around. I like games like this because you can play with a lot of people. But if it's not good, it's not good. So no condolences here. So it's got to go. Mom Gamer, good question here. Have you backed or considered backing Monster Hunter? No, I didn't back Monster Hunter. And I don't really want to back Monster Hunter. I saw the gameplay of that and Primal looked to be like the game that I wanted from the Monster Hunter experience. And Wild Ascent looked like the game that I wanted from a Monster Hunter experience as well. So it was really interesting because it was get Monster Hunter or get Wild Ascent or get Primal. But I think that the gameplay looked very similar to Wild Ascent, but I think Wild Ascent was a tighter experience and it looked more fun. It's also proven, which is fantastic. So I am very excited to play Wild Ascent. And then Primal takes the idea of hunting these giant creatures, pairs it with the mechanisms from Marvel Champions, as well as the boss battling style of Kingdom Death Monster, but with its small condensed board. And I love that. I think that is the one that I definitely went over. So once again, not a game that I don't even think I considered it, because I looked at that's not true. I looked into the gameplay and then I decided not to. So because of those comparisons to Wild Ascent and Primal. So super excited though. Yeah. Played Floriferous, don't feel like I need it. Good to hear. This is one that I looked at a couple of times, heard very good buzz about, but one that I went that I strayed away from. It looked very similar to Herbaceous. It was by that same company, that same style. One that I want to try before I get it for the library. I like small card games. I think they're fantastic, but they have to really give me decisions that I feel good when I play, or feel like agonizing. I think both of those are good. Agonizing can be a good feeling in small card games. So I've discovered it's something that I enjoy. All right, so Mom Gamer asks, how about Mrs. Mackenzie's top 10 games? So Mrs. Franklin, Ariana, her top 10, I think that Legendary would definitely be in there. I don't know what else would be in her top 10. So, I'd have to ask her. I think that she really enjoys that. I think she really enjoys Awkward Guests, and I think she really enjoys, what's another game she always asks to play? Zombicide. She really likes Zombicide. So I think those are three that I'm pretty sure would be in her top 10, but that's a good question. I'll have to ask her if she'd be up to do something like a top 10 list with me or something like that. That'd be fun to do. Maybe I try to guess her top 10 games. That'd be a good idea. Good idea, Mom Gamer. That'd be a good one. Thoughts on Storm Sunder? So I looked into Storm Sunder. Miniatures look fantastic. The gameplay looks cool. It looks like a large campaign setting game. This is actually one that I considered backing as well, but I haven't. I don't know what stopped me, because normally I'm not. I can jump into these large things, but I don't know. It just did not really stand out to me, if that makes sense. The mechanisms look fine. Everything looks solid, but nothing extremely crazy standoutish. I can't tell you more. This is not one that I think people are going to look in the library like, ooh, they have Storm Sunder. Let's give that one a try. It's a campaign game, so it's going to be hard to get people to jump into and want to play. I'm not sure what else more to talk about Storm Sunder. Let's take a look at it though. Let's see what we have for Storm Sunder here. And also the what was it? Wild Ascent is in the same universe as Storm Sunder, and that was another thing that pushed me to go with Wild Ascent over Storm Sunder, because it looked like it was a more condensed experience with that Monster Hunter vibe, as opposed to something like a dungeon crawler, which I think is cool. So this one in particular, though, looked fine. I can't say any negatives or positives. I haven't played the game, but it does look cool. I can't give much more on this game. It looks fine. Yeah, I have no quarrels or qualms with this. I wish I could say more. Sorry, Mom Gamer. I'm glad you understand. Cosmogenesis is on the radar for Best at Star Trek. Awesome. And Dice Miner and Iki. That's a lot of games, man. Who plays so many games? Definitely not me. Glad to hear, though. I've heard really good things about Iki and Dice Miner. I'm glad that those are getting some love. I'm surprised that Dice Manor didn't make it to any best of the years, particularly for lighter games. Gamers also got some love for Iki. Awesome. We'll go ahead and leave the chat out for about another 2 minutes, and then I need to get to the gym. We just got back from visiting family, so we're back in Colorado Springs now and getting through a lot of game content. Like I said, we recently got all those games in, Townsfolk, Tussle, and the new Res Arcana, all that stuff. So I've been sleeving lots of things. That copy of Glory to Rome is all now in its nice new box and ready to go. We found some sleeves for Glory to Rome, and unfortunately, they're a little small for the player aids. They were binder pages, so we got matte finished binder pages. They're like a 16th of an inch too small, so they're sticking out a smidge, which is kind of goofy. So goofy stuff. Absolutely, Mom Gamer. That's what we're here for. Super excited to be here this morning and super excited to talk about games. It's been a while since I did a live stream, and that just tends to happen. So super excited to be back. And thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you, Best of Star Trek and Mom Gamer, for being here this morning and for having questions ready to go. Super excited. Always will answer the questions that you have for me. May not be a good answer, but I will. I'll try my best, especially when there's just two of you. It's really easy. Any last questions before we wrap up today? Otherwise, I may call it here. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up now. But thank you so much for being here today and for talking and listening all about what we've been playing. So thank you so much. If you have any comments or any games that you'd like to share about what you've been playing, we'd love to hear. We've got Iki and Dice Miner, all sorts of cool game suggestions from our viewers here. Super excited to try out more games. Once again, looking forward to playing some Townsfolk Tussle and Tinder's Trail, as well as Witchstone. Super excited for all these awesome new games. But what have you been playing? What games are you excited to play? And what would you like to hear more about? Thank you so much for all your support, for being here. Happy New Year. And thank you so much for being here this morning. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. See you later. Bye.